Welcome to Around the Blockchain. It's going to be a fantastic episode, the best we've had so far. We're looking at the SEC investigating digital currency group. What's that going to mean for you? Also, a huge crypto bank maybe is insolvent. Silvergate woes are hitting the market hard. And we just had breaking news right before we went live. Machinski is being sued, the embattled CEO of Celsius Network. It's going to be a great episode. On the top right, you see him right there. It is Firoz holding down with that blue square. Make sure you follow all everybody's content here. Always putting out really great stuff. On the bottom right, we have RiceTVx, really great YouTube channel, really great interviews on there, nice exclusives as well. On the bottom left, we have Crypto Blood holding it down from the Detroit 7 Mile in the house. And on the top left, we have Joe Parys, and he's feeling green today. And it's not just that Nike hoodie going up and to the right. Is it the rest of the crypto markets? Let's get right into it. The DCG investigation. Now, a lot of this is rumors, so, just kind of want to lead with that. This is from AP Abacus, and this is an update. Digital currency group Genesis under active investigation by the SEC. Sources confirm that there are multiple whistleblowers that have come forward, and I wanted to share this as well. This is from Crypto CFA. Digital currency group mistake number 1, buying Grayscale Bitcoin Trust on leverage. Mistake number 2, not letting Genesis go to Chapter 11 after the 3ACs debacle. Mistake number 3, not accepting creditor committee terms. And the pie is shrinking from here. So there's a lot of moving parts around this story right now. Also, just, not to overwhelm you, this is the blockchain data that we're looking at. This is from Peck Shield, and we're talking about tens of millions of dollars are being moved currently. Right here, you can see 64,000 Ethereum is being moved to this address. Then they later deposited 4,000 less wrapped ETH, and then borrowed against that and got $25 million in stablecoin from MakerDAO, and then transferred 4 million of that to Coinbase and 1 million of that to Kraken. And you can all see it here on the Etherscan address. Interestingly enough, this address sold $75 million worth of ETH in January of last year. So we're seeing a lot of moving parts. RiceTVx, I'll go to you first, because there's a lot of insiders when it comes to digital currency group. So it's a little surprising, seeing these SEC headlines. Do you think that there is or will be an active investigation by the SEC into DCG?
That's a good question. Thanks again for having me on the new channel. I appreciate. I'm always enjoying these conversations around the blockchain. We got some great guests today. But now, again, this isn't anything official. We haven't seen anything come from the SEC website. A lot of us in the crypto space have some insight as to who the digital currency group is, Barry Silbert and all of his relations and such. I really don't see the SEC coming after digital currency group. But considering everything that's kind of going on in the space, it kind of looks like as if there's some kind of a war going on behind the scenes that we're not really privy to seeing exactly what's going on. It seems like there might be some institutions trying to take out other institutions. So it's going to be really interesting to pay attention to. But again, digital currency group is just, they're too wrapped up into the traditional legacy system. If we're thinking about the legacy system trying to overtake the cryptocurrency market, digital currency group, BlackRock, are going to be the entities that do so. And they're going to do so, as others have said, Ben Armstrong included, from the inside out. And I think that's what we're seeing happen right now. We're going to be talking about the Silvergate story, and obviously digital currency group is an investor in that. We see what's happening between Genesis Lending and the Gemini Trading Exchange, and the date that the Winklevoss have given Barry Silbert, which is coming up in just a couple days. It's some interesting things, but the more that I see this, the more that I'm looking into it, it seems as if there's some sort of battle going on. And I really feel like there's some good people in the cryptocurrency space that is doing what they can to try to keep crypto very much decentralized and crypto, and not allow for digital currency group and BlackRock to get the hold that they're trying to get.
Oh, I like that. I'll be rooting for that as well. Now, Farouz, he brings up a good point where, we have a battle, essentially. You have a battle between DCG and then the Winklevoss twins, due to the Earn program. Is this a battle where there could be a winner, or possibly two winners, or is this going to be a situation where everyone's walking away a loser?
I think there's a situation where everyone potentially could be walking away as a loser, right? Because if you look at the hierarchy for DCG, underneath DCG, you have Genesis. It's part of the parent company. Underneath DCG, you have things like CoinDesk, you have VC portfolios. So, if anything, they're clearly having some sort of internal war, which really needs to be resolved because now we're kind of it's spilling out into crypto Twitter, as you can see. And as we know in crypto, it's a very speculative industry, and we're all speculating. And as Rice TV mentioned, we don't know anything yet. All we know is that supposedly there's a source. There are some whistleblowers. But again, when we start looking at some of the things like the mistakes that they've made, like borrowing GBTC on leverage, you mentioned earlier, creditor committee terms, all of these things also, they kind of echo something very similar in terms of what was happening with FTX and Alameda. There is borrowing going on in the background. There just seems to be something rhyming to me at this point.
All right. And speaking of rhyme, we have someone from the neighbor of 8 Mile, Crypto Blood. We don't really know too much
MC
about the
Crypto
facts.
Blood, get that right.
MC Crypto Blood, MCCB. Now, but what we do know is there are executives that have been fleeing like rats scurrying away from a ship. Mr. Summers, former president of Harvard, former top official, Department of Justice and the Treasury Department. Interestingly enough, one of the executives of DCG that just jumped ship. Do you think that this might be a trend where, maybe due to internal battling, maybe due to, the writings on the wall, do you see DCG potentially becoming insolvent as more and more of the executives leave this, embattled company?
Yeah, thanks, DZ, for having me on. I just one request. I want to always have this red square, okay? And when I'm on ATB, you better
That's
be a
above
red
my
square.
pay grade. You heard the producers
Okay,
on
all
it, I
right.
think.
I'll send you my
Producers,
thing
get on it.
address.
Get on it, Drew. Get on it, Drew. So yeah, I said this a couple of weeks ago, man. I think this is the gray swan that we're all looking to hit or fly away or land, whatever. I don't know how you want to put it. But this, I think Norio Rubini said that crypto and Bitcoin is a big cesspool. No, Norio, the cesspool is DCG, Grayscale, Genesis, all of them. It's a problem. And they're all, it's going, the shoe is going to drop very soon, DZ. And I think that is the last capitulation in crypto. So people out there, it's not financial advice, but have some dry powder because I think once the headlines hit about Grayscale going under, Genesis going on, all of them I think are going to go under. But once that starts, it's going to cascade into just a nightmare and the last washout for crypto. And at that point, the low is in, and then we can build a base from there. So hey, that's what's
All right.
that's what Crypto Domus is saying here.
All right. I like that. Now, Joe Parys, you have the green background, so I'm going to ask you, are you echoing these bullish sentiments? We are seeing some mass layoffs happening right now at Genesis. Is this just part of, broad restructuring, or, do you feel like maybe there is more pain ahead and the bear market could possibly extend another 6 months, 12 months, maybe even further?
Yeah, well, thanks, DZ, for having me back on the show. Smash up the like button, click the subscribe button because we're on a new channel. Thanks again. And, the big thing that I'm looking at here is I'm actually going to go against the grain and say that, things are going to be better than what they're looking at right now. And I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Everyone's a little bit bearish. Everyone's a little bearish. Here's my thinking with this whole situation. Typically, according to Jenny Q Ta on Twitter here, she said that the SEC doesn't come knocking until things blow up first. And there's been a lot of whistleblowers. There's been some concerns where there's smoke, there's fire, right? But the fire isn't here yet. So until that happens, I would still be more on the side of, all right, look, Bitcoin's down pretty low. If it goes lower, then that's just like a bonus, right? But your risk reward now to Bitcoin and a lot of these other altcoins, if they make it in the long run, remember, nothing is guaranteed. This isn't financial advice. But if we see another massive bull run in the next couple of years, you're going to be looking back at all of this, just like you do every single bull bear market bust cycle and go, man, I wish I would have bought down at those lows. But the problem is that people don't remember at these low points when everything was this bearish, when there was so much turmoil. The SEC was investigating not only this, but, and they're not yet, but they're investigating everything right now. I don't know what other, projects and other things are not being investigated by the SEC at this point. So there's a lot of rumor. There's a lot of speculation. Don't let it scare you, from where things are potentially going with crypto. I do see the greener side to everything in the future. And you know, I think once the smoke clears, it could be you know, green signs ahead, DZ. So that's
All
my
right,
thoughts on this.
yeah, two things from that. Yeah, it's probably easier to list what Gary Gensler isn't investigating than to actually list what he is investigating. And I'm getting a note from my producer right here. I think Jen Utah is relation to Johnny Utah, the former college football star turned surfer. All right, let's move on and talk about Silvergate and the Silvergate woes. I'm looking at the stock right here, and honestly, finances on Yahoo really isn't even sharing the real story here, because if you look at that chart, it just looks like, yeah, maybe it got cut in half. No, this is closer to a logarithmic scale. $150 as recently as March of 2022. Now all the way down to $12. So we're looking at more than a 90% correction, probably roughly 93%. Now, what is Silvergate? It is a crypto bank, and they just had to cut staff by 40% to cover the liquidity event that happened after the FTX withdrawal, after the FTX debacle. A lot of people went to Silvergate, tried to withdraw assets. Like most banks, they don't have a 1-to-1 ratio, and they had to sell $8.1 billion worth of assets. But some of that was at a loss to cover the withdrawals. Now, Joe Parys, a lot of these, you know, you're talking about this bullish narrative. It appears that a lot of exchanges were just kind of waiting for Bitcoin price to go up, maybe sentiment to return, maybe try to find some strategy to operate at a profit and then eventually start paying everybody back. But we keep seeing that all these exchanges operating at a loss, start borrowing from customer funds, allegedly, potentially, seemingly. So is this another case of a potential insolvency that, you know, could cascade into further price action down, in your opinion?
I mean, it certainly could, but this is kind of par for the course, in my opinion. I think that, you know, most other cryptocurrency companies and like other companies right now, everyone's taking losses. Everyone's cutting, you know, Meta just let go of a ton of people. You know, Tesla, like that stock is just like nosedived. So to me, like this isn't something that's like way out of left field where I'd be, again, super duper concerned. It's kind of like, all right, yeah, they sold at a loss. Yeah, there's been a, you know, a big decline. But overall, like, you know, I just don't, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting year in 2023 about how macro and crypto come together. But it feels to me, it feels like we are so close to a bottom because of all of this happening. This stuff doesn't typically happen at the top. Everyone at the top, what was happening? The exact opposite. Everyone was hiring. You know, we had Super Bowl commercials. You know, we had all this stuff going crazy. And that was the euphoric top that we saw just about a year and a couple months ago. So to me right now, it's feeling like, all right, this is the last little straw here. And if something crazy does happen, and it could, we could see lower prices. Like, I'm not going to say that that's impossible because we've seen it. But if you look at the 4-year cycles, if you look at how this market has continued to evolve, the same thing has been pretty much happened 3 times in a row. And so it goes up, it goes down. We're kind of at that down point. I think a lot of us are seeing that in the charts and everything else that's happening around us. And that's kind of what I'm seeing here with this. And not to take it lightly, but I'm not super concerned by what's happening.
All right. And, you know, I'm going to go to you, Blood, because, you know, kind of in the realm of price speculation, what if here, I know you have some levels that you have been looking at. If Silvergate was to have a just complete collapse, completely failed, it would obviously trigger some sort of a sell-off event, some sort of a short event. A lot of people are going to see that tweet, immediately open a short. What do you think it would do to the short-term price action on Bitcoin? Would we fall through that 16,500 level? Would we even potentially break through that $15,700 level?
Yeah, I have us going to 12,700 as the line in the sand. And I think we could see a nice capitulation moment on a move from Silvergate, Gemini, any of those 4 companies, DCG being the parent company for the other 2. Yeah, I think that is definitely in target. I don't see anything further than that at this point, but that is still maybe about 20 something percent away from where we are right now. So that's a huge move down for Bitcoin. And that translates to maybe about a 50% move or more for the altcoins further down. So that's a big move in the markets. And if you look at like the Dingleberry twins, I call them Winklevoss twins, they are doing open letters. So you know it's getting real tight.
Yeah.
if they're out here calling out Barry Silver on Twitter, you know it's really getting
Publicly.
hot in that kitchen. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
bad.
They
It's getting bad.
I haven't met them personally, but they definitely don't seem like the person to just, air dirty
Exactly.
laundry like, just random
Exactly.
tweets. Firoz, I want to ask, another what if scenario here, but what if they do look like they're on the ropes? They can't do the rope a dope, but one round longer. Who are they going to turn to? Or do you think they'll turn to, just give up? Is it possible they reach out to CZ, Binance? Is it possible they reach out to a Brian Armstrong, a Coinbase, or potentially private investors, or maybe even the two secret signatories for SBF's bail?
Yeah, I mean, CZ might be a stretch, right? Because I mean, Silvergate, it's a Federal Reserve member on the New York Stock Exchange, and obviously we know how the SEC feel about
Not to cut
CZ
you
in
off, not to
general.
cut you off. Do you not see the potential? How SBF, they bought that random bank in Washington State to kind of backdoor into the system. Would that not potentially be an option here, you think, for CZ?
Well, look, I mean, I'm sure they have. I mean, if you think about it, it's easy. The way their company's structured up, I'm sure they have offshore companies that are perfectly, or legally operating within US, and there could be a potential for a backdoor. But again, I think there might be a fair bit of resistance put up against that, just generally in terms of what's going on in this space. I mean, one thing that we just need to be clear on is a lot of the reason why we're here is, first of all, Silvergate is, as uh, as always, if you want to view it, is a traditional bank, right? They run on fractional reserves, and this is why they found themselves in this situation. They don't operate. Well, I suppose I would say they should operate like other exchanges within crypto, but again, those we've seen what happened at FTX. There wasn't really a one-to-one mapping there of tokens to customer funds. But here, my point that I'm making here really um, is that once again, we've seen a bank run here. There's greed within this place, which is what's really caused us to where we are. But again, I think this is what a lot of people are waiting for. Just like Joe and Crypto Blood have mentioned, RiceTV has mentioned as well. I think this could potentially be the final capitulation event that we're all waiting for. And to a certain extent, deep down, maybe I am hoping that they go under.
Okay, all right. I wouldn't mind that final leg down. All right, now Rice, I'm gonna get a little conspiratorial here. I always like to get conspiratorial with you. I've watched enough Law and Order to know that when there's a crime, oftentimes you look to see who has a motive. So my question to you is, if Silvergate were to go down, who would benefit the most from this? And do you think there's any dark forces at play here?
I mean, dark forces when it comes to Silvergate being down, I wouldn't call it dark forces because Silvergate has a big investment from Digital Currency Group. So I'm looking at it as a Digital Currency Group subsidiary. So if it's under attack, it's being under, and I talk about a battle happening behind the scenes. It's possible people like CZ and the Winklevi are in some way on the same team fighting against said Digital Currency Group potentially. I did forget to mention that I'm a subsidiary honorary CFTC whistleblower, and I haven't heard anything from my whistleblower friends in regards to the last
Snitch.
topic that we talked about. Now, the other thing I want to mention here is tomorrow, Friday the 6th, we have a full moon. The full moon has a lot of effects on the cryptocurrency markets, whether you believe it or not. You can go back and look
Is
at
it a
past
blood
markets.
moon?
It's not a blood moon. It's actually a wolf moon. It's a micro wolf moon. So anyways, but the full moons always have an effect on markets. You can go back and look at this. I did an awesome interview that I put out today with a channel called Waters Above, where he takes technical analysis, gematria, numerology, and astrology. The other thing is we have and this is going to be happening right in the middle of all this, but the 8th is the deadline that the Winklevi are giving Digital Currency Group. And then we have a week from today or a week from tomorrow, which my next appearance on Around the Blockchain is going to be Friday the 13th.
Yep.
And generally on Friday the 13th, there's not good market action either. So I look for the next 7 days to be
13
really
points. Look
bloody.
at that.
In all honesty, I just look for the next 7 days to be bloody as hell and just pay attention to the moon and the cycles going on, because we are still in a overall lunar cycle. And that will change on April 20th when we have our total eclipse of the sun here in the United States and around the world.
All the numerologists are scribbling furiously as we speak.
Stop Rice's count at 13 so we can keep him there.
Well, let's talk a little Machinski, and he is being sued by one of the toughest states in the financial sector. That's right. I'm talking about New York. The NYAG James. You can see her Twitter right here, Letitia James' office. And this is the tweet 6 hours ago. I'm suing to get New Yorkers their money back and ban Mashinsky from doing business in New York. Machinski is the CEO of Celsius that froze withdrawals. A lot of people in the office were affected. Just full disclosure, I have 2 ETH stuck on that network. We will continue to protect people from the risk of investing in cryptocurrency. He tricked hardworking people into investing their life savings into Celsius, promising big returns, claiming it was safer than a bank. Instead, it collapsed, and New Yorkers were then left in financial ruin. And now they are suing the CEO of Celsius Network for defrauding people out of billions and billions of dollars there. Now, this it looks like these statements.
Yeah, but you know what?
from
You actually
Mashinsky.
said this with a straight face. You said safer than a bank, and you said that with a straight face. So I
Oh,
commend
it's
you
easy
on
when
that.
I'm quoting. It's easy when I'm quoting. Now they're saying a lot of these statements came from things that he said between 2018 and June of last year, and he's saying he misled specifically by saying that the company had $11 billion under management without disclosing that $12 billion in liabilities. Now, Firoz, you can kind of walk through, this for a lot of people. I went to accounting school. I kind of, I get when I hear these assets, these liabilities, but just, explain for like a 5th grader, what does it mean when 11 million in assets, 12 million in liabilities, what does that mean?
Yeah,
What does that
sure.
mean for
And
the
yeah, no,
average
I mean,
investor who
yeah,
gave him
yeah, no,
$1,000?
yeah, no. So in layman terms, you're saying or you're showing you've got 11 million on the books to your shareholders, so everyone's happy. But actually, once you take away all your operating, what you owe people, debts that you've accrued, money that you owe to other organizations that have been obviously in party with you, then what are you actually left with? Those are what are called your liabilities. So in fact, whatever they had in the bank wasn't even enough to pay out all of their debt to everybody else. So liabilities and assets.
All right. How do you think this is going to play out in the long run?
Look, I'm getting SBF vibes here, right? Because and you kind of mentioned it here before. He's reassuring people that everything's going to be okay, or okay, he's out now, but he was reassuring people that everything's okay when under the books it wasn't okay. They were scrambling around trying to figure out what to do, covering up assets within the book, so it all looks great to people. And the problem with that is just like SBF and his damn tweets is it's all good, it's fine. No, it's not fine because we don't have enough to actually pay out people that we genuinely owe money to. We've led them down a track saying everything's fine, and everyone's obviously at the height of a bull run. Everybody's euphoric. They want to invest their money. Greed is flourishing everywhere. And we want to make money, so we will pour it to whoever. And unfortunately, all these CEOs, they're all held accountable. All of them have the same story. Everything's fine. I mean, look at some of the recent, I don't want to go to FTX too much, but look at some of the recent findings from Caroline, even mentioning that, we were actually still, messing around with the books. We were hiding amounts so it actually looks fine on paper when we're actually showing them to float. And this is exactly what's happening here. And it's just a nasty place sometimes. But this is
Yeah.
what greed does.
Yeah. Nasty man, blood coming out of his wherever.
right.
Now, Rice, I remember those videos. I remember him reassuring. He was sometimes scowling, always sweaty in those videos. And I didn't really have an opinion at the time. Obviously, I should have pulled out my 2 ETH in retrospect. But what are your thoughts on Alex Mashinsky, just as an individual and, as a CEO of this company? Can he navigate these stormy waters?
I'd had to actually see a little bit more of what took place because when Celsius first went down, a lot of people were really blaming Alex, and it is very possible that there were a lot of irresponsible things that were being done on the part of Celsius. But was the Celsius escalation because of something that had to do with FTX? Was there something happening behind the scenes that also kind of added to the equation to bring down Celsius like we've seen it? Now, I've had the opportunity to meet Alex Mashinsky. I've had him on my channel. I've seen him numerous times. It says the last time would have been a little over a year ago before any of this stuff kind of
You and
came about.
I,
I think it
right?
was
We
at
were in
the
Miami.
Central at the
Yeah.
Central in November. And I had actually asked him about how he thought he was going to get past the issues of regulation because there were states coming after Celsius. It wasn't happening on a federal level, but states were coming after them. And he was assuring me then that they were going to be successful. Now, one thing, I mean, if he is a bullshitter, he's a really good bullshitter because I can smell that stuff generally from a mile away, and I wasn't able to. So I'm not really quite sure the intentions behind Alex Mashinsky, but obviously there was some irresponsible things done. And anytime anybody's being defrauded and they're utilizing the legacy system, such as Celsius did, because they had to connect up with the regular financial system and do KYC and AML and all that. When you're doing that and you're defrauding investors or doing something that you should not be doing with users' funds, there should definitely be repercussions.
All right.
I mean, because unfortunately, we're not in a position where we can just straight up police our community enough to where we could find actual consequences, like an actual situation where he can actually suffer the consequences. Unfortunately, I think the legal situation would be the only way that we would be able to see that today.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the legal consequences. Crypto Blood, it looks like they chose a civil suit over a criminal suit. You know, it's obviously probably going to be a little bit easier to try. You can keep it a little more financial. You don't have to, you know, prove as much. O.J. Simpson comes to mind. You know, he was guilty via civil, but he was innocent via the criminal court system. What do you think of why do you think the civil suit was chosen as the path instead of criminal? Because it almost appears like they kind of have a slam dunk case. And also, what were your thoughts of Celsius and Alex Mashinsky?
Well, you know, when I was down there in Miami with Rice, you know, he wouldn't let the guy party. He was in his investigative reporter mode. I'm like, Rice, just let him chill, let him live. But he had to ask the question. So that's Rice for you.
All right,
Actually,
you got an
know,
extra point for that, asking the hard questions, even at the cons, at the after party.
No, this was at an
Oh, yeah.
after event, a party, a Celsius
Yeah, it was
sponsored
after.
after party. Yeah, so this was actually kind of
Right.
chill time, and I was definitely in journalist mode.
I didn't get the BS meter didn't go off for me either, quite frankly. So it's interesting that that's happening. But to go back to the whole accounting thing, maybe he wasn't or they weren't implementing gap accounting and not marking to market those assets. And so that's maybe how he was able to think that he was getting away with saying I only had this amount of liability versus these many assets on the book. I really don't. I was defending him when it all went down with Celsius. I was kind of defending him, to be honest with you. Now, after the fact, I did hear a lot of stuff to come out. He took over the trading. He had hired some random Twitter dude to do, you know, trades for them and all that. Yes, but that could be a scramble or, you know, him panicking to try to get back to break even or above. I don't know. We'll see. We see what happened with Terra Luna. It's a lot of information coming out saying that maybe Terra Luna didn't have anything nefarious going on. It was really SBF and FTX that made Terra Luna go down. So who knows? We just got to see where the chips fall, and it will take some time to find out what the truth was in this whole case.
Yeah, no, like you said, a lot of it's going to come down to the accounting. You did say gap accounting. Those who don't know at home, gap accounting is when you no longer carry Yeezys in your store and you have to detangle from Kanye. You have to figure out your gap accounting and also generally accepted accounting principles. Joe Parys,
that's a good answer.
Joe Parys, I want to ask you something, you know, because we're talking about Celsius and what brought people to Celsius is the idea of free money, aka a little bit of a yield, a yield product. We saw what happened. It's been a very painful 24, 36 months if you're really trying to chase these yield products. What would you say to the investor who is just now learning about yield and says, hey, what do you mean my Bitcoin can earn 5%, potentially 10% a year, and I don't have to do anything? I'm really interested in this. What would you then say back to that person?
I mean, honestly, after going through all of this, I would probably say to them, like, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. I mean, you're chasing after 5% for, you know, even if you have $1,000, it's like, what are you going to make off of that? $50 a year? Like, what are you going to lose $1,000 over $50 or whatever it might be? It's like, to me, that's nowhere near worth it. You know, not your keys, not your coins. It's like the most cliche thing that we've ever said, or not ever said, but like we've been saying it over and over again. That's what I would recommend to people. It's like, you got to really learn how to take custody. And here's the thing too, you know, we had some really good answers when it comes to the accounting. But for the 5th graders and the 3rd graders and everyone watching the show, here's what happens when you have 11 billion in assets and then you have 12 in liabilities. You're broke, DZ. You're broke. That's
that's where my ETH is. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So unfortunately, you know, look, when I first heard about Celsius, this was actually you know, Ben talked about it a very long time ago on the channel, And I looked into it, and I thought it was like really interesting idea, right? Just because if you looked at how Machinski actually, build this whole thing, it was like, look, we're a better, smarter bank. The banks only give you like a very small amount. They're lending out your money, right? It's like, so we're just going to be a bank, but we're going to do it better and we're going to pay you better. And I'm like, that's a good idea. Like, if you think about it, the problem was what they were doing with our money, again, at the back end of it. And that's really unfortunate. Like, I don't know all the details, right? And I don't think any of us truly know all the details of what happened. And if you look at, I saw Alex at, crypto conferences. He was on AMAs and live streaming all the time. So to me, a lot of the guests even said here that, like, their BS meters weren't going off. Mine wasn't either. I mean, he had some legitimate other companies and things, but I don't know. It's a really unfortunate situation, but it has to be a learning lesson to everyone here in crypto is, look, take control of your crypto, right? And if you want to earn yield, DZ, there are ways to do it. But you got to really educate yourself and make sure that you own your own asset to own to do the yield, right? Like throwing it on an exchange or throwing it into these other platforms. I mean, you're just kind of asking for some trouble. So
yeah, and
One thing-
learn about sell pressure as well. Go ahead.
I want
Rice.
to add something to that. A lot of people weren't aware of this. I mean, like Alex Mashinsky, he had made his money and a lot of his success with being a part of the group that created the voice over internet protocol. And then one of the things that Celsius was doing was a revenue share, not a profit share, which would have differentiated
That's
them
security.
from a bank if they were actually. But the problem is, if you're going to try to act like a bank, you're going to do what other banks do, and you have a zero requirement with banks, and banks are getting bailed out. I don't know what the hell Mashinsky was thinking.
No, and Joe brought up a good point. You kind of reiterated there. I allowed my hatred of banks to cloud my judgment, and I gave this man 2 ETH to chase 8%, 9%. And I should have known better, but everything was a little bit bullish then. And again, I was based my judgment off of emotions, and we just hate banks.
But DZ,
hit that like
real
button
question,
if you too hate banks. Go ahead.
yeah, the real question is, does the hat match the shirt or the shirt match the hat? I'm just trying to figure it out.
I am
can't
staking.
figure it out.
Speaking of staking and chasing yield, I'm staking my ape. So don't listen to me. I'm just some buffoon who likes monkey JPEGs. All right, that is all we have time for. Don't copy trade DZ ever. It looks like RiceTVx
Trade them.
ended up with the
Well,
most.
you
points.
notice that DZ doesn't have a trading channel. We all know.
Yeah, I don't have a
right?
trading channel. The best comment actually was about you, Rice, and they were talking about your after party. The full moon clouded your judgment, and so now we know why the BS meter didn't go off. But RiceTVx, you end up getting the most points. Feel free, take it away. Leave us with some parting thoughts.
Well, I do want to encourage everybody who's watching this to make sure they're subscribed here to the new channel Around the Blockchain. Make sure you're subscribed to all the other guests following. My channel is getting really close to 32,000 subscribers. I'm like 30 away. So if you guys could subscribe, if you're not already, at RiceTVx, it'd be appreciated. And check out my new channel, my non-crypto channel, Rice Against the Grain. Have a great day.
I'm subbing right now on the ATB. Appreciate it. That's all we got time for today, Bit Squad. Until next time, DZ out. Follow all of these channels, links in the description, and look out for Frankie in 15.